Fantastic. Okie dokie. So, welcome to another Friday in the TEFL Development Hub. It's Friday morning here in Spain and in the UK, where Rachel is based. We've got a fantastic session coming up today. So, we're joined by Rachael Roberts, who, to be honest, I would say knows just about all there is to know about developing a market within ELT. She has a huge amount of experience as a teacher, as a trainer, and now as a business coach, helping teachers like us to earn, learn, and thrive in ELT. So, Rachel, I guess you're going to chat a little bit about the programs that you offer later. So I won't go into too much detail about that, but I mean, you've worked with so many fabulous people and really helped them to flourish and to bloom in their ELT careers. So first of all, congratulations to you for building such a fantastic business.
Thank you. Yes, so I've been running this business now for 6 years. I don't know where the time's gone. I've been having so much fun, obviously. But I started out before that. Well, I mean, I've done a lot of things within ELT, as you say. Like I've been a teacher for many years, a teacher trainer, an academic manager, materials writer full-time for about 13 years. And then probably about 10 years ago, I decided that I wanted to do something that had more direct impact, because the thing about writing materials is you write them and off they go and you never really know what happens. And I trained as a counselor and psychotherapist like 20 years ago. And so I thought maybe I can use those skills more. So I went back and did a coaching diploma. And I started off doing life coaching, but with people from the sort of language teaching world, because that's sort of
Mhm.
the world I understand, I guess. And what I discovered was that probably, the large majority of people that I was life coaching, the biggest issue was that they were being overworked and underpaid. Um, so more and more what I was doing was actually business coaching. And so at a certain point, I kind of decided to own that and go full in. And so, yeah, I see myself as very much kind of helping people within this profession, and indeed language teaching in general, work out how to monetize the skills and experience that they have, because there are so many talented people in this profession who are not, receiving what they should be
Yeah.
for the skills that they've got. So that's kind of where it started.
Fantastic.
Um, so in this session, yeah, what I want to do really this is more aimed, I guess, at people who are sort of thinking about going freelance or who are in the earliest stages of setting up their own business, and just give you like an overview, if you like, of what it takes. So
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, I was just thinking because particularly since the pandemic, all of these teaching platforms that are available online seem to have exploded. I mean, obviously they existed before, but now whether it's just through, being more aware and more people are moving online, we're hearing more about them.
Mm.
But they sound terrible, to be honest.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I am going to talk a little bit about that as well, because I think that's where a lot of teachers naturally start.
Hmm.
And I think there are some arguments for that, but there are quite a lot of arguments not for that. So let me get my slides up, and we'll go through some of these things, because yeah, definitely that's something that I very much do want to talk about and have a few things to say. Okay, so I'm sharing the slides now. Can you see that?
I
Okay.
can, yep, thank you.
Okay, great. So I think we've done the introduction bit, but just briefly. So I'm a business and mindset coach for ELT and language teaching freelance professionals. So I include the mindset coach because in my experience, the mindset's a big part of what holds people back. And we will talk a bit about this in the session as well. And my main offer is a 6-month deep dive, fully supported, hands-on group program that takes you through everything that you need to know in order to set up or improve an existing business. So I have got a question for everybody. First of all, we just mentioned platforms. So anybody who's watching, can you let us know, like, yeah, how do you currently find clients? What are you doing at the moment? Are you marketing it yourself through social media? Are you using word of mouth? Are you on a platform? I'd love to hear a little bit about what's what. Well, I was going to say what's working for you, but if you're at this session, maybe it's not working for you. What are you currently doing, whether it's working for you or not?
Yeah, well, we've got a few people who are watching, so do feel free to drop comments in the chat. I know that a lot of people, you mentioned social media there, and a
Mm,
lot of people struggle with LinkedIn because LinkedIn tends to be a professional platform, but a lot of teachers that I've spoken to feel that it's much more about connecting with other teachers rather than being able to find students, for those people who are actually working as teachers rather than teacher trainers or offering programs to support teachers. They often say, that's not actually a place which is working for me
mm,
in terms of finding clients. A couple of people, oh, we've had Preply. Matthew says he's on there, and Nofile says a platform and also word of mouth to find
mhm.
clients at the moment.
Yes. So, okay. So I'm going to talk about each of those. Just to go back to what you were saying about LinkedIn, because you're absolutely right. I hear this kind of thing all the time as well. And I think LinkedIn's a fabulous platform to connect with other teachers, and everybody can benefit from that. But whether it's good for you to find clients depends on two things. I think, firstly, it depends on whether your clients are actually on there. And it's very good, I think, if you are teaching, business English, to take a sort of wider approach, or professional adults, kind of in general. Obviously, if you're not, if you're teaching teenagers, you're not going to find them on LinkedIn. But it's not just about, and I'm going to talk about this more. A lot of people go on there and think that they can just kind of announce, I teach business English, and the clients will flow in. And there's a lot more to it than that, basically. And it is about carving out like a niche for yourself and getting known for something specific, firstly. And secondly, one of the great things about LinkedIn is that you can find people who are in your niche if your niche is kind of to do with what they do at work. And people don't use that because they have a horror, and I get this totally, of that whole cold messaging. Hey, want to hop on a call? And, like, I'm not suggesting that you should do that, but there is a middle ground between doing that kind of sleazy thing and just reaching out and asking if people want to connect with you. Because if they connect with you, then they will start to see your posts, and then they can make up their minds for themselves whether or not you're somebody that they want to work with. And so I do think that actually that active connecting is often the missing piece for people. And, we can't do that in the same way on Instagram, for example, because we don't know enough about people, but we can do it on LinkedIn. So that would be my top tip from that point of view. Okay, so let's have a look at those different ways of finding clients then. So let's start by talking about working on a platform. Now, I could probably talk about this for the rest of the time, but I will try not to. Okay, pros of working on a platform. And, there are some. If you don't want to be bothered with doing your own marketing, then being on a platform can work for you, because obviously the whole point of a platform is that they help you to find clients. The problem is, for me, the clients that they find you. Because in most cases, people who go to a platform like Preply or Cambly or italki are looking for something cheap, not something good necessarily. And there are a lot of people on these platforms who are in countries where the cost of living is much lower, and who are following Preply's advice to start their lessons at $3 an hour. And you can't compete with that if you're living in Europe, nor should you try. And so it can be very difficult, I think, to find the right kinds of clients on platforms like that. And it's all about volume for the platform. They want to have as many people as possible on there. And they're not really interested in, whether you're earning a higher rate or not. And that's their business model, and that's how businesses work. But I don't think it works very well for us. The exception, I think, would be maybe if you've just qualified and you want to get some experience, then it might be worth doing for a while, just so that you can teach loads and loads of lessons and just kind of get more confident and better at it and work out what you want to do. But I don't think it's very sustainable. Now, I always get people saying, no, but it works for me. I think occasionally it is true that you can kind of find clients on there at a higher rate if you have a specific offer. But it's so hard for people to find you there in amongst all the low offers. That's the problem, I would say. You're making it hard for yourself, in my opinion. And I'm in a couple of groups like on Reddit and Facebook and things for Preply tutors. And the talk all the time is sort of fear-based, really, about, oh, if I don't accept this client, then they're going to hide my profile. If I don't convert this one from a trial, you're not in control of it. And I am a control freak. And I'm all about, for me, having control over my own life and for my clients as well. And, so I'm not a fan personally. The second thing that people often talk about is word of mouth. And I am a fan of word of mouth. I think it's, it can be great because obviously if somebody comes to you through word of mouth, it's because someone's recommended you. And that means that they are, they've gone through like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, like along the path towards working with you, compared to somebody who just sees you on social media. So, big advantage from that point of view. And I think word of mouth, it's certainly part of my marketing strategy. I know that my clients talk to other people, and I'm always very grateful when they do. However, I don't think that for the vast majority of people, it is a strategy in and of itself, because it's not consistent and it's not reliable. You never know when somebody's going to come to you through word of mouth or not. And so again, you don't have any control. And it often means that you get periods where things go a bit quiet and you're having a big panic, and you end up taking on anyone that you can get, red flags fluttering nonetheless, or just people who aren't really what you want to do. So you really want to teach IT professionals, for example, and you end up taking on a 15-year-old doing first certificate. And then that just means that you're spreading yourself thinner. You're having to do more preparation, and you're probably charging less than you should be because you're, a bit desperate. And we've all been there. So I think it can be great as part of your strategy, but rarely the whole thing. That's what I would say. What do you think, Therese? I mean, how does that tally with your thoughts? And is there anything coming up in the comments? I've tried to pull up YouTube so I can see them, but I've got too many windows open. Just
too many things, too many things. No, I mean, I think word of mouth, it's something I've always associated with people within a community, a physical community, like in a town. Somebody starts a lesson with one person and they say, oh, and my son's friend also wants English, and so on and so on. One thing that I thought was really interesting that you mentioned just then was about how finding your niche actually saves you in preparation as well. Because obviously, when we have clients, customers, students, we always want to personalize things to them. And so we do kind of tend to think, oh, I need to spend time preparing this for this person. And like you say, if you're kind of much more focused on a particular group, whether it's exam preparation or IT professionals or nurses and doctors, it does take a lot of that pressure out of thinking of what to cover each lesson.
Mm, absolutely. And I'm all in favor of, not having to reinvent the wheel, which doesn't mean that you can't personalize, but
Mhm.
you can personalize within that particular sort of framework, if you like. And in fact, what I encourage my clients to do is to move away from that sort of hourly rate, hourly lesson thing altogether, and instead to create an offer, a package, if you like. And again, I'm going to talk about this a bit more. But part of the reason for that is because then if you are an expert in that particular type of client, and you know the kinds of things they need to achieve, the kinds of problems they have, you can make sure that what you offer includes those things, and they will apply to different clients. And if there's something that you're teaching again and again and again, then I think you need to be thinking about, well, maybe I could make that a video, and we could use the class time in a different way. So it's thinking about it from that perspective. And the more you do that, obviously, the less planning and preparation you have to do, because you then just have to do the bits that enable you to tailor it perfectly.
Mhm. Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
So,
We've had Speak Lab agrees, yeah, word of mouth works well in small towns and villages.
mhm.
And then I think Matthew, this was perhaps maybe about the working on a platform. It's a short-term solution.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, sometimes we have to find short-term solutions, but we should, I think, be wary of still being stuck in that short-term solution 5 years later,
Mhm.
which is something I see all too often. Okay, so what's the alternative then? So I'm saying, like, neither of these things are good. So the alternative is finding your own clients. Now, these are some of the things that I hear when I suggest this to people, like the kind of response, because it can feel like a big barrier. Um, and so many people do resist the idea of having to learn how to market and sell their services. And I get that, because if you're a teacher and you've worked in schools or, the state sector or whatever, you've never done anything like that, so it feels really sort of alien. In fact, I don't think it is very alien, but I'll explain that. So these are the kinds of things that I hear. Oh, I don't want to spend hours on social media every day. I'd much rather just pay a commission to a platform. Now, two things to say about that. First of all, you do not have to spend hours on social media every day, and if you're doing it right, you shouldn't be. But you do need to spend some time there, of course. Um, but if you really know what it is that you're trying to achieve through your posts, as opposed to somebody like me saying to you, you should post more often, and you going, oh God, what do I put? Then it's much more effective and you don't have to spend so much time. Secondly, the commission, yes, it's absolutely, I think it's fair enough that platforms take a commission. I mean, they're a business, but the commission is often very weighty, and you continue paying it forever. Whereas if you put the effort in to learn how to market your business on social media, it will take less and less time as time goes on. So it's that whole kind of, give a man a fish or teach him how to fish thing. There is a pain barrier, I'm not denying it, but okay, the second one then. Yeah, oh, I've tried this. I've tried posting lots of content. It doesn't work. Well, it depends what you're posting. All right. It's like saying, oh, I've tried teaching English. I went in and did all these things in the course book and it didn't work. Well, maybe you weren't doing very well. So it's about how you do it. Ads is another thing that sometimes comes up. And again, this is understandable because people are thinking, oh, this is really difficult. So if I just boost some posts or, maybe that'll work. And or people are saying, oh, no, but I don't want to spend lots of money on ads. So let me say, first of all, that I would say that ads are something, if you're in your first 5 years of business, I wouldn't bother. All right. I think they are something for when you've really, really got everything nailed, it's working very well, and you want to take your foot off the pedal and have people coming in without you needing to actually post yourself quite so often. If you start with ads, you don't know what works. And so it probably won't work. So, ads should be a way of amplifying something that's already working for you rather than a way of avoiding having to actually do the work. Sorry. All right. Which brings me to I'm a teacher, not a marketer. I just want to teach. Now, I could be a bit rude here and just say, well, get a job then. All right. Because if you have a business, you do have to do some marketing and you do have to learn how to do it, I would say. But honestly, it's not as big a leap as you might think, because good marketing is about showing people where there's a gap between where they are now and where they want to be, and what you believe goes into that gap to help them. That's the essence of it. And that's just like teaching. All right. You're identifying a gap and then you're helping people understand what goes in that gap to get them to the next stage. So actually, teachers are usually very good at this kind of thing once they get their head around it, because it's what they do all day. So yeah, when people think about marketing, they do often think about the whole sleazy used car salesman type of thing. That is, of course, a way of marketing, but it's not something that resonates well with me or my clients. But equally, it's not something that actually works in this context. Because if you're a used car salesman, once they've driven off the forecourt, like, it doesn't matter if the car goes wrong, that's their problem. But if you're then going to work with somebody for 3 to 6 months or more, that absolutely does matter. So, you can't get people in, I think, by tricking them, even if you wanted to, because it's going to backfire on you massively. And then, I just want the quality of my work to speak for itself. Well, it won't. This is the problem. It will in terms of word of mouth, but other people are not psychic and mind readers. So we have to show people why they should work with us, which brings me to the last one about showing off online, about how great I am. It's not about showing off. And in fact, I think when people approach it in that way, it's not very effective, because who wants to work with somebody who's a show off? Like, people don't. But what people do want is to have information to enable them to make a decision. And if you don't give them that information, then you're not doing them any favors. So any thoughts on those, like either from you, Teresa, or anyone in the comments?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking kind of I just want the quality of my work to speak for itself. I think sometimes some teachers are very good at marketing themselves through showing what they do, whether
Mm,
it's kind of creating actually meaningful posts rather than the don't say this type of post, which everybody hates. But actually kind of showing that they've got the knowledge, the theory,
mm,
that they kind of demonstrate their teaching skills through the quality of what they post, which is trying to attract students. And I think that's
mm,
kind of a really, well, in my opinion, that's kind of a good way to
mhm.
reach people, because then they see like, oh, this person actually knows what they're talking about. It's not just a fast fix.
Yeah. No, I agree totally, actually. And I think we definitely need to be doing some of that. I mean, I guess, this is what I'm doing now, hopefully. But we do need to make sure that there is that sort of missing link between showing the quality of what you do and talking about your offer, because often that is missing. And we assume that potential clients will look at it and go, oh, they're good, I could work with them. And they don't. They just go, oh, they're good, I'll follow their posts. Like, full stop. So we do need to kind of make that link for people. Mm-hmm.
And I guess as well, like provide them with with a way to take it to the next step, whether it's like a call to action within the post,
Mm-hmm.
or having kind of contact details or
Yeah.
something that kind of suggests that you are looking for people to work with as well.
Yes, because honestly, I think quite often people look at this sort of good quality work and it almost doesn't occur to them, that this person could be somebody they could work with more closely. They just see it as like, oh, this lovely person that shares this nice stuff, which great, but that's not actually going to, put food on your table, etc. And making it clear as well, and I think also another thing I see people doing quite a lot is like jumping too quickly to the book a call with me when actually people are not quite ready for that. So this is where things like mailing lists come in, for example. Sometimes people need time to build that relationship with you, but you can still take them one step further on. Maybe that's clicking on your bell on LinkedIn. Maybe it's joining your mailing list. Maybe it's just following you. But so the CTAs can take people closer to working with you as well as straight into that, book a call thing. Although you should still have book a call sometimes because some people are ready. Okay, so 3 things then that I think you need to do. So the first one is specialize. Now, we've already talked about this a bit, like when we were talking about niche. People pay more for specialists. People value specialists more. And the clients that I work with are specialists. They are. I don't work with people who are like straight off the Salter. I work with people who have that experience and expertise. So it's not that you have to kind of pretend to be a specialist. It's that you have to work out where your specialism is, and then work out how to get that across to people. And it needs to be obviously a specialism that is useful for people. But also, I think it's important that it's something that you enjoy and that you find satisfying, because I think it's very difficult to make a successful business out of something that you're thinking, oh God, do I have to, before you even start. So I wouldn't go down that route of somebody telling you, yes, you can make a lot of money doing this, if your heart's really not in it, personally, because I think it's hard to do that. I've got an example here. So this is a conversation that I came across on Reddit, which I thought was interesting, like going back to what we were saying about Preply. So the question here is, it's probably a bit small on some people's screens, but what's the cheapest way to learn German in Zurich? And the offers here, so tandem, so you offer your native language and someone else teaches you in return. Find a private teacher from Germany. Check out fiverr.com. A few years ago on italki, I found some Germans offering extremely cheap online lessons from Mexico. Some of them were even offering for less than 25 Swiss francs an hour. A free course, Duolingo. You could try online lessons, e.g. Preply. So you can see that there are lots and lots of students out there looking for basically the cheapest possible option. And I'm not criticizing them for this, right? Not at all, because I think it depends on your situation. And it may well be, that you're moving there, you don't have much money, and you need to find a cheap option. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not shaming people for that. However, these are not your ideal clients. And these are not the people that you want to be trying to attract, at least not if you're in Europe and you've got like the European bills to pay. Because you can see they're looking for people basically who are willing to do it much more cheaply. But there are alternatives. So the reason that this caught my eye was because at the time I had a client, Sandra, who is in Zurich teaching people to speak German. Right. And, you know, she could look at something like that and think, oh, God, you know, like this is a disaster. Nobody will ever want to pay my prices, because she, you know, charges, she's not cheap. But she has a specialized offer. So she focuses on professionals. She focuses on both work and social side of things, because she deals a lot with expats, if you like, who've moved to Zurich and have to kind of, you know, start speaking German or improve their German. She doesn't work with beginners much. I think it's more kind of people who need to polish it. And so she thought very carefully about, well, what is it that they need? And a lot of what they need is that social side. And so part of her offer is that she buddies up people who are working with her so they can meet up in real life and practice their German together. You know, so it's about thinking about outside the box in terms of what people usually do, which would be, okay, come to me for an hour's German and it's this much, and instead create something which has those things that they really do need, even if they don't entirely realize that they need it. So that when they see your offer, they are like, oh yes, you know, that's what I need, that's what I've been looking for. And that's when people are willing to pay more and not just go for the bottom line of, oh, I can find somebody online in Mexico. Another example here, of a client. So Kate. So Kate is a teacher to Spanish speakers. So that's part of her niche. But she's also now the word's gone now. Oh, yeah, there you go. It's at the end. She's a speech and language therapist. So she's a real specialist in terms of pronunciation. And so she focuses on pronunciation specific for Spanish speakers. And it's not about, you know, she has a British English accent, but she's not accent training. She's making it easier for people who speak English, who are Spanish, to be clear and understood and confident in speaking English. And again, this is something that some people will look at that and go, yes, because I know all these words in English. I know how to speak English, but every time I open my mouth, people go, huh? So this is what I need. So it's a very specific offer. And again, people will go for this and will pay more for this if this is what they've identified that they need. And sometimes we need to help them identify it. You know, so that's part of what we do when we're posting on social media is raising awareness of, you know, this is why you're struggling with this. And this is how I think I can help you. Okay, so before I go on to the second point, any thoughts about the first one?
Well, it was interesting what you were saying about kind of working with experts, because we've had a comment come in, like how we get imposter syndrome as well quite often as teachers. And I think, you know, what your point before as well about not wanting to show off, and we feel quite often embarrassed to say, I'm specialized in this. I don't even want to say I'm an expert in this, because that in itself sounds like
Mm.
you know all there is to know, whereas as teachers, we're constantly learning. So I think that idea of specializing and not being afraid to say, this is what I really want to do, this is what I'm passionate about, and that passion becomes your expertise for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think imposter syndrome is very widespread. It is not a medical disease, despite the fact it sounds like it. It's something that is much more prevalent in minorities, and I think that tells us something. And what it tells us is that it's about basically sort of pressure from society, sort of telling you that you're not as good. And I think, we can all kind of fall prey to that. But the opposite of that is not like I'm the most amazing teacher who ever walked the earth. It's somewhere in the middle. I know I've taught this a lot. I know my students have got good results and have been happy. That's enough. That makes you a specialist, because it's something that you are particularly interested in and passionate about, as you say, and that you care about, and that you help people get, the results that they want. And that's it. So yeah, you don't have to think of yourself as being the greatest ever. And I mean, people don't need that, do they? They just need you to be good enough, to get them what they want. Okay, so the second point then, after the specializing, is around the offer design. And we've talked about this a bit already, in terms of creating an offer that both perfectly fits your ideal client and the needs that they have, and also your own priorities. So that might be your priorities in terms of what you're interested in, but it can also be around, well, what hours do I want to work? So, if you want to work fairly standard hours, don't pick a niche that involves students on the other side of the world so that you have to get up at 4 a.m. It's kind of like the obvious thing. But it could also be around, do I want to work with people face to face or online? So how many hours a week do I want to work? Am I happy to be very flexible about that, or does that not really work for me because I have school age kids or what have you? Do I want to take off school holidays? So thinking about all of those things and making something that fits both of those elements. And that this is kind of like the antithesis of this. This is a real example, and it's just sort of one of many, so I saw this on Super Prof. This is not what I mean by an offer, right? Just to say, right? All levels and ages, one-to-one, groups, right? Anybody who will have me, and 10 sessions for only £80. In fact, the maths really doesn't work here, because she's got 85 down the bottom for 10 hours. And then I think 15 hours actually might work out slightly more expensive than the 10. But anyway, all right. But, this is not what I mean. All right. What I mean is something that has a specific outcome for people. And I know at this point, people always say, like, yes, but how can we guarantee the outcome? Well, you can't. But you can guarantee that you've put everything into this offer that should lead to that outcome if they also do their part. That's what you can guarantee, because you can't obviously make students do the work. We all know that. So, the key thing to remember is that people are not interested in buying your time per se. They want the results. And if you think about that, if, I don't know, if you wanted to have a new kitchen, for example, you don't want somebody to say to you, yes, I'll give you a new kitchen and it'll be, £40 an hour. Right? You want to know, okay, how long is it going to take? What's it going to look like at the end? And what's the total price? Right. So that's kind of what we're going for. So to give you like another example, this is not obviously a teaching example, but somebody who's got a really bad cold, right? What they want is to have something that makes them feel better. So you have an offer, like your offer is the chicken soup, right? Homemade, full of antioxidants and nutrition, nice and soothing, right? Okay, so that sounds good. And then you start saying, right, so I can give you 10 chickens for the price of 8. You're missing the point, all right? She doesn't want chickens. Right? She wants something that's going to make her feel better. So when we say create a package, then we're talking about an offer which is a solution to a specific problem. And you understand really well what that solution is because you're a specialist. So to give you an example, all right, I'll talk a bit about Design to Flourish, which is my group program. So the result that people want is to have an offer that will get great results without them having to work all of the hours, without them having to do so much preparation, and to learn how to attract the right clients for that consistently so that they know that they're coming in and they can kind of stop worrying about it. And how I do that. So these are like the ingredients in my chicken soup, if you like. So this is part of my sales page. So I'm not going to go through all of these. You can go and check it out if you like on it's Earn, Learn, Thrive in ELT.com. But here I've kind of pulled out all of the ingredients. So you've got the recorded content, you've got an initial sort of booster where we have 3 extra sessions to work on your offer. You've got feedback on your offer, you've got group coaching, you've got access to a professional copy coach, Jennifer Murray, you've got a one-to-one session. So, here are all of the kind of ingredients and the value of those ingredients. And I've looked this up. I haven't just pulled this out of the air. Like I've looked this up with what other people are offering or what I'm offering is about £7,000. But I'm charging 3,000. Right. So that's kind of what I mean by an offer. Right. These are the sort of ingredients. And these ingredients are not here like randomly. They're not, oh, I could just shove this in because it looks good. Or, oh, I've got this material I haven't used for a while. Let me pop that in. Right. They're here because this is what I think you need to get the result that I promise. Okay, so there are 3 key questions you need to ask about your offer then. So what are the specific results that your clients want? What's been stopping them getting these results? So, the way that they're learning, like maybe they want to be more confident and fluent and they've been learning on Duolingo. Well, then what's stopping them is that they're not actually doing any speaking with people. Right? And then how exactly can you help where others have failed? And this isn't about, again, you being the best teacher in the universe, but it is probably about you understanding better what it is that they need. And when you've identified those things, then you need to look at how you're getting that across. So, just to give you an example, I mean, this is a little bit similar to the other one, but this is a reel about that I found on LinkedIn, right? The name of the company seeks to equip people of all ages and backgrounds with the English skills and confidence needed to succeed at school, at work, or in the wider community. So now I hope that everybody watching knows why this is not going to work, right? Because people are just going to slide straight past this. It's not for them. Like it could be for them, but they're not going to see it. Right. So instead, you need to be thinking really deeply like this. This is partly why my program takes 6 months, because it takes a lot of time to really work this stuff out. Who is it that you help? Not just IT managers, but what kind of people at what stage in their career, all of those kinds of things. What exactly is it that you help them with? Right. And it's not just English. And not even just confidence. Like you've got to get more specific. And how do you do that? Specifically, what is it about your approach or your method or your offer that helps them with that? And going like next step down, then once you've got your program, if you like, what's the impact of that program? And what is the negative impact if they don't solve that problem? That's another thing to be thinking about in your marketing. So if they carry on doing what they're doing now, if they carry on working on Preply for the next 5 years, for example, right, what's the negative impact of that? Because it's not just about what you might achieve by working with you. It's about what you won't achieve if you don't. And what impact would it have, if they get those results? How would their life change? And those are the things that need to be in your marketing, in addition to showing how good you are as a teacher and the quality of what you do. Because if these things aren't clear to people, they won't see why they need to change the status quo. And then last but not least, how do potential clients know they can trust you? So this is where we need to be sharing things like testimonials. It's not about showing off, right? It's about giving people that information. If you buy something on Amazon, I always look at the reviews. I think most people do. We want that information. And so think about that in terms of your testimonial. So it's not like, oh, I'm so delighted to have this testimonial. It's much more about, you might be wondering about this. Here's what this client thought. Right? That's the point of it. Okay, so to summarize then. So these are your 3 steps to success. So first of all, specialize. Secondly, create an offer or a package which is precisely tailored to get those results. And, those are the 2 things that we start off with on my group program. Like, what are you going to specialize in? And then working on the offer. And then the marketing piece is all about making sure that enough of your ideal clients really understand why they should choose you and your offer, which sounds simple, but obviously there's quite a lot to it, but that's the nub of it. So I hope that you've got like some, if you're watching, that you've got like a clearer overview, if you like, of what we need to do. So I think we've got a bit of time for questions now. As we're on YouTube, I just thought I would give a little shout out to my YouTube channel, which is at Earn, Learn, Thrive, because there's a lot more, information and videos about this kind of thing we're talking about there. So you might want to check that out. So that's at Earn, Learn, Thrive. And we have a little bit of time for questions.
Fantastic. I mean, we haven't had any questions come in. We've had a couple more comments.
Okay.
Matthew, I think, again, this was related to the Super Prof thing. Worst app ever was the comment. And I'll share the link. I'll share the link to Earn, Learn, Thrive in ELT and to your YouTube channel as well in the session notes.
Great. Thank you.
I think because you mentioned obviously that you don't work with people who are straight off the CELTA, people need time to develop. I guess there's, how long is a piece of string, but do you think some people do find their niches much more quickly than others?
Yes, no, great question. I think yes, absolutely. And often I think what helps, and this is why, I wouldn't say never maybe not straight off the CELTA, but I do work with some people who are earlier career. But what tends to distinguish them is that they have something else, like from a past life, I don't mean in the spooky sense, to offer that they can combine with the English. So that can enable you to find a niche, I think, relatively quickly. Let's say that, you previously worked in sales, for example, then, I can help you. I think you do need some teaching experience first, but then I can help you work out, okay, how are we going to combine those 2 things so that you can help people who need to pitch in English, for example. So that helps in terms of sort of moving into it faster, if you like.
And then what about the other end of the scale? So, these jack of all trades who did their CELTA, did their Cert TESOL early years, and then ended up in academy teaching where they were working with everything and everyone under the sun. Any suggestions on how they can develop their niche?
So, I mean, you're talking about like most of my clients there, I would say, because I tend to work with people who are a bit, further on. They usually do come to me and say, well, but I can do all these things. Like, why shouldn't I do all of these things? And I'm like, well, you can, but you're making your life much harder for yourself.
Hmm.
And that is a very important point to make, actually. Just because you decide to focus on a niche doesn't necessarily mean that you're never allowed to teach any of the other things again. It's not like taking a vow of chastity. All right, you are allowed, but it's much easier in terms of marketing and in terms of like preparation and all of the things we talked about. And I think what I do is to talk to these people and to help them kind of pin down what of all of the things that you've done really lights your fire. What do you enjoy most? What kinds of clients do you most enjoy working with?
Hmm.
And that's usually where we start, unless there's some reason why I think that wouldn't make a viable business.
Hmm.
That's, nearly always the way to go, I would say.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess one other question, because when we were talking about the reasons that people don't go off on their own, one of them was around this idea of spending a lot of time marketing and things. Is that something else that you talk about as part of the program, kind of managing your time and identifying or building that work time when you
Mm,
are on social media, building that into the price,
yeah.
so that all of your time is basically billed, even
Mhm.
if you're not actually doing contact hours.
Yes, totally. Yeah, thank you for bringing that one up, because I think this is one of the biggest shifts that people need to make, because most people are used to that sort of being employed setup where you teach like maybe 20, 24 contact hours, and you don't have to think about anything else.
Hmm.
So you're just doing those hours, you're doing the prep on those hours, and that's it. Whereas when you have your own business, you need to be spending a good chunk of time. It will vary how much, but it could be up to as much as 50% of your time. If you're looking for quite a lot of clients, if you're running
Hmm.
group programs and things like that, in sort of running your business. So marketing is part of that, but also so is onboarding your clients, um, you know, the accountancy, all of those things. And so many people try and shove all of that into time around teaching 24 hours or
Hmm.
more, 40 hours in some case. And that's, the maths doesn't add up.
Hmm.
So you need to be charging more in order to make that work, so that you can have fewer contact hours and have enough time to run the business. And, sometimes it is tricky, that kind of moving over. But so what I usually suggest to people if they're in that situation is to, just start by, if you've got hourly paid clients, you know, where can you like just put the price up to start
Hmm.
with, so that you can drop a few clients, or they might drop you if you put the price up. Um, but you'd still be getting the same amount of money,
Hmm.
just fewer times. So start like that. And then, as time moves on, then you can move over more and more towards the package and free up more time to market.
Hmm.
I'm very pragmatic about things. I think you have to find something that works.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's excellent advice. We've had a question here as well from Bashir. In one of the slides, a teacher says, I'm a teacher, not a marketer. Is the process as overwhelming throughout as it is in the beginning? And also, what digital tools can handle things?
Two great questions. So I don't think it has to be overwhelming, actually. I think it's about really, really understanding like who your ideal client is and what they want to hear. And I think once you've got that, or what they need to hear, once you've got that, it becomes much easier to create content. Secondly, you do not have to be, posting on 79 different platforms, 3 times a day, etc. It's not a question of, more is better. Like quality is much more important than quantity. And regularity and consistency is what we're sort of aiming for. But certainly, I do help you to develop systems for creating content.
Hmm.
So we look at coming up with what are known as content pillars, which are like sort of the main topics, and then how you can sort of cross-reference that with different types of posts, so that you can come up with like a sort of grid of ideas,
Mm.
much more quickly, so that you don't have that, oh God, I need to post something
Mm-hmm.
feeling. So it does, that's why it kind of gets quicker and easier. And sorry, I've forgotten the second part of the
Well, the
question
second
about
one was about
money.
the digital tools to
The
handle
digital
things.
tools, right? Yes. So I use a scheduler, and it is paid, but it's, I think it's about £15 a month. So the amount of time it saves me, like, I'm very happy to pay that personally. And the one I use is called Social Bee, and you put your content into buckets, like by topic, or by anything you like. So that makes it very easy for me to reuse posts, which is also helpful. And I schedule them like a couple of weeks in advance. And then I don't even really have to think about it, other than just to pop in and see if anybody's commented, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So that's useful for me. If you're not yet ready to pay for a scheduler, Trello is really good just for organizing and keeping your posts, because you can sort of keep them in columns according to your content pillars. Notion, a lot of people use Notion very effectively. I think some kind of system like that is a lot better than just having it in Word files that you don't know where anything is and you never use it again. I mean, it's like old lesson plans, isn't it? We all keep them and then we never use them again because we can't remember where they are or even what they are.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep. And I think as well that kind of that consistency, it also helps to build the client's trust with you that,
mm,
they know that, for example, a guy that I follow on LinkedIn, he publishes idioms once a
mhm,
week, or somebody else does quizzes with language. And so when people see that that is kind of your content and that you're consistent in that and it's consistently good
yeah.
as well, that helps. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is important because it's about, showing that you can be relied upon.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, I agree.
And wouldn't it be easy if all of the social media platforms had perfect dimensions so we didn't have to resize everything?
Yes, but I think they do it on purpose. Although I have to say, I find that if I use an Instagram sized one, it's fine on the other platforms.
Hmm.
So
Good tip.
that's what I do.
Very good, very good. And I think as well what you were saying there about, £15 for a scheduler. I mean, for some people, that's half an hour's work,
Mm,
when we're thinking about kind of by the hour
yeah.
payment. And actually, if you're spending 2 hours, 3 hours posting on different things, when you look at it from that angle, you go, of course it's saving me money. It makes sense. Although
Mhm.
the initial outlay is like, oh, I feel weird
Yeah.
spending on this.
Yeah. Said every teacher ever. But you're but you're right. Because we have to recognize that our time is limited.
Mhm.
So we only have so much time and it's really, really precious. You can always make more money. Honestly, you can make that £15 back with all the extra time that you free up.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, and on the topic of time being limited, we're
Mm,
at the end of the hour. Do keep any comments coming in, and I can either send them through to Rachel, and we can find a way to share more information. Rachel, thank you so much for giving up your time and expertise and knowledge, and just for being such a wonderful person who really wants to help teachers get more from their careers as well.
mhm. Thank you. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I run a business, and I'd like to have clients, more clients. But it is really part of my mission to just sort of change people's mindset about these things,
Hmm.
because I just think it's so important in our profession that people recognize the value of what they have, and that they can, do better and have more time for themselves and have, you know, less worry about money.
Hmm. Oh,
Mm.
sounds idyllic. Fabulous. Well, we'll be back again in another fortnight's time with another fabulous session. See you over on LinkedIn and in